to give you a little tour of my homemade 8-inch disc sander. Put it on a turntable so that we can put it around. I can show you some of the features. I'm sorry I can't show you the build because it is done, but you know, you should be able to figure it out from what I'm going to show you. A couple of unique features. This bench rest often is screwed down, and so to change the disc, it's kind of a hassle. You have to fit it down in there. So I went with wing nuts. These come off, and it's like one of these bolts is getting loose. Should probably put a little glue on that. That gives you direct access to this, so if you need to change this, you just peel it off. I just noticed I didn't peel off all the paper when I put this 80 grit on here. So, there it is. Easy access. One of the nice things about this unit is I can put my little dust vacuum on here, fits in this hole, and it pulls everything out of here. The air just passes next to here, goes down in, pulls everything out. Works really well. I've installed a box here, and the drill plugs into it. I could have cut this cord off and wired it direct, but I'd prefer to do it this way, and it also gives me an additional outlet if I'm doing some other work. So that plugs in, and on the other side I have a simple switch, so the wiring goes underneath the drill, and this is my on-off switch. Pretty handy because I don't have to turn the drill off. I can just flip it off right here. So you may notice that there are 3 layers of plywood. This is a small piece of scrap Baltic Birch. These are 2 chunks of 3/4 inch, I don't know, Lowe's or Home Depot plywood. Not great stuff, but it's done the job, and in 2 years it has not warped. Here you can see there are 4 layers of Baltic Birch with another flat piece on the bottom. This was actually a pretty challenging thing to do. It has a bearing on this side and on the other side. I'll take the shaft out and show that to you. You can see one of the bearings here. This slides in, and I put a couple of washers here just so that the wood is kept away from this piece. This shaft is all the way into here, though it doesn't go all the way through, and it is JB welded in. Now there's a good example, a couple of examples online of how that's done. The most important thing is to get this shaft and these discs, this face, the front actually, at a perfect 90 degrees at every location. You can do that a couple different ways. Nevertheless, it works well. So 1 bearing here, 1 bearing here. And this block made out of Baltic Birch holds the shaft perfectly steady. Another feature, and this is pretty common, is you have one of these to depress the trigger. And it's simply a bolt threaded into a little round that I had cut out, and then there's a pressure fitting in here. It's all just 1/4-20. So as you turn this, it depresses the trigger and changes the speed. Now one of the things that happened with this is, even though this is jammed in here pretty tightly, it would tend to move around a little bit. So I added on this with a wing nut, so if I ever want to take this out, I can unscrew this drop it out of the way, and get the drill out. Actually, I've never taken the drill out since I made this. There's a piece here that it goes up against and basically sits in place. I got a small block here, and everything is screwed down. There's screws here, there's one underneath here and here, and it's all screwed to this plate. Here's the bearings. They come in this little plastic thing. Not much to them, pretty cheap. They are sealed. You do want them to be sealed bearings. But so with this in place, you put this in, tighten it down, and for some reason it seems to be jamming right there, but a little brute force. And we can just tighten it down and put everything back together. One of the things I did that made this a lot easier, when I cut out this large round, there were some scraps left over. Basically just the corners, if you will. And I used those to cover the end, and since they were from cutting this out, there's just one kerf of difference around it, and that makes it almost totally seal up. So there's maybe close to 1/8 of an inch difference, but it works really well to help seal this up, because on the back side you can see there's just a small gap there if I get that lined up properly. So you can use that material and it will make a real difference. Another thing, I almost forgot. I also made a couple of little guides. These are, again, some scraps of Baltic birch. I've got some 3/8 and 1/2 inch. It's actually not 1/2 inch or 3/8, but close enough. And this fits on here, and it fits pretty tightly because I used, fits pretty tightly. I used the same thickness here as here, but I also put in, this is kind of a neat trick, a couple of small rectangles of paper. And when I glued it up, of course the paper is really just thin wood, that gave it just enough extra thickness so that it could slide over. So I've got one that gives me a 90 degree, and I've got one that's double-sided that will give me a 45 in either direction. Of course, these have a lot of pressure on this joint, so it is screwed. I'm going to give you a little demo of how this works. And of course, I'll have on eye protection and ear protection. Not bad. That's with some 80 grit. Could do that all day.